You know what? In this episode, she burped twice, but I was not recording. I'll try to find a way to edit that in.
I did burp very subtly while I was
very subtly
drinking a little tea, but I don't think I'll be able to find it.
What's Diana's favorite exercise? Burpee!
Hello and welcome back to Chai Chatter. Today we'll be discussing our morals with the side of Earl Grey tea.
Best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Okay, anyways. So, everybody's heard of the famous train track dilemma. You have a train, and it's chugging along, and it ain't stopping whatsoever. There's a malfunction. So, on one track, somehow, people are tied. There are 5 people that are tied there, whereas on the other track, there is 1 person tied there. And you have the choice to flip the switch so that the train kills 1 person instead of 5. Do you do it?
The obvious moral answer that most people jump to is, well, yeah, of course, killing 1 person isn't as bad as 5. But now let's put a bit more weight onto the situation. What if, like, you're driving this train, that train's going somewhere, that train is moving something. You're gonna mess up the whole economics if you switch tracks.
So? I don't care.
I was just throwing that out there.
That was not the direction I thought we were going to take there. So first of all is the utilitarian idea. Utilitarianism essentially says what is moral and what is right brings the most happiness to the most amount of people in society. And so they would say, well, 5 people obviously outweighs 1. But there's also this other guy, his name is like Kant or something, yep. And I think his whole shtick was that if the train was about to roll down the tracks and hit the 5 people naturally, you should not alter the fate. That 1 person is essentially innocent, whereas the 5 that were going to be killed anyway, you know, that's their fate and you should leave it up to them. And it would be wrong of you to change that actively.
So imagine how many people would be upset over the economics. I'm kidding. No, in that situation, I think most people are pretty quick to go, yeah, of course I'd switch. It's not that hard of a choice.
I think I would definitely switch.
Now, if that 1 person was a loved one of yours, would you switch it? Would you let the 5 people die?
I mean, like, realistically, if it's a loved one, I probably would let the 5 people die. Like, I'm just being honest here. If it's a loved one in the moment, obviously, you're going to do anything you can to help them.
So the third kind of option, that is the most messed up one, is that somehow overhead there's an incredibly obese man that you have the choice to push down and stop the train somehow. He would have never, had encountered this situation whatsoever had you not pushed him down.
Pushing him in front of the train would slow it down enough that they'd be able to stop.
Yes. So would you in that situation push down the guy?
Is one of the people still a loved one, or is it just like 5 random people?
It's 5 random people, but you have to push a guy off a platform to stop it.
I don't think I'd do it.
I wouldn't either. It's too much of the physical action of pushing someone
that
in
was
front of a train.
Innocent. Yeah. And we had this discussion in English class too. Whether if you are a perfectly fine observer and you encounter the situation, whether you have a moral obligation to make a choice based on whatever philosophy you believe in, or if the simple act of, changing the course of fate put something on you that you shouldn't tamper with. Those 5 people were meant to die.
What if you were controlling the train and you are on parole, you've been convicted before, and you know that if you get questioned for anything, you're going to get in more trouble and it's just going to cause a whole mess. Maybe not necessarily getting arrested again, because that's not really a reason for it. But it'll put you in a whole mess and people are going to assume things because you're already a criminal. And this is just the regular 5-1 scenario again. Would you pull the lever or would you leave it in order to save yourself of the possible pain of having to go through everything again?
So yeah, basically it's like either A, you go to jail, or B, someone lives who could have died. I think that, I don't know, going to jail seems less worse than letting someone die. I don't know. Just having that on your conscience would probably be kind of bad,
Kind of bad. But somebody is going to die anyway, right? Because you'd be flipping from the 5
it's a 5 to 1 still.
Oh yes, I see. Still, you're still saving people, so.
I feel like that's the sort of thing that I don't have the life experience to speak on.
Yeah,
I would hope not.
By
what
the
have
way.
you been through?
No, I don't know what exactly it would feel like being in that situation.
First little question from me that I got. So this one's kind of a little more maybe realistic than the others. So if you knew that like one of your very best friends who you've like known forever was cheating on the person they were dating, would you tell that person and like and ruin your friendship with that friend?
I think I would talk to the friend first and be like, you should tell them. And if they don't, at least they know why you did it.
Yeah, like I don't have a lot of experiences with relationships, but I think with any like, you know, behavior like that, dishonesty or whatever, there's a root of it, right? So either like you might have to Dr. Phil it with your friend and get down to the bottom of why they're being like that. Because if you're friends with this person, that means you know that they're good.
And you should have some level of respect for them.
Yeah, you should have, and you should know, like, my friend is a good person in, you know, deep down or whatever it is. And this is, like, something maybe of circumstance or something that we need to get to the bottom of. And so you need to figure out the reason for the cheating. You know, if your friendship matters enough to you, you should want to do that for your friend. And maybe eventually, if you can talk things through with your friend, they break it off.
And let's say after you talk to them, they're still like, no, I don't want to break up with him. It's still fine. It's not a big deal that I've been cheating on him. Then what do you do?
I say then you tell the person you're cheating.
I agree.
Okay, yeah, this is kind of like a hot topic. I've seen a lot of different opinions on the internet about this.
I like
shoplifting. Is that okay or is it not okay? Like
you
if it's,
really have to elaborate.
Okay, so let's say that like it's not something you're in a store and it's not really something you particularly need, because in my mind if you genuinely need something like to live, then shoplifting is a-okay in my mind. But if it's just like something you want and you're shoplifting, when do you think it's okay and when do you think it's not okay?
I would have very loose morals on this, especially if we're talking about like a very large chain. Like when it's local, you know, the person that runs the store, you are meeting face to face with the person that if you shoplifted, that would affect their lives directly. Whereas when it's a big company with, you know, faceless employers and stuff like that, you don't feel the weight of that as much.
I think it is easy to explain away by being like, oh, well, corporations, it's not going to even affect them and all that sort of stuff. But I think still, even morally, I would feel very bad about it. And if someone needs something, I'm not going to condemn you for like casually grabbing a loaf of bread or something and just like shoving it in your bag before paying. Like that is you trying to survive.
I think that it's okay as long as, number one, it's not like a local shop and like no one's going to suffer from you shoplifting. And also I've heard somewhere that like some chains take out of like their employees like salaries if they lose profits to shoplifting. I don't know if that's true. I just heard that somewhere.
I've heard that has occasionally happened, but I'm pretty sure that's very morally wrong by the company.
Yeah, so those are my two exceptions where I think it's like not okay, but other than that, I don't care. Go ahead.
Yeah. We're gonna do kind of opinions of ours that are kind of controversial or not necessarily generally agreed upon around, you know, our sphere at least.
I guess I'm starting. My thing is, like the ACAB, all cops are bastards movement, I just don't like the wording of it. I don't like saying that all cops are bastards. Now, I understand what it means and that it's saying that cops are bastards because they are in a bastardized system. And I understand that and I accept that and I do believe in that. The wording is awful. I think that it's not a good way to describe the movement. I think that it's not the way that we should be.
Yeah, I think that maybe the kind of thought process behind it is maybe just like because the way that it's phrased does get a reaction. That's true.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe that's kind of the point, to get a reaction, and then you kind of like settle down from there, because it gets people's attention, you know. That's why we might be talking about it right now. So yeah, you find out, I don't know how to explain it, but like in my mind at least, it's like, oh wow, this is like super radical, and then it forces you to kind of do your research on it, and then you kind of find out that it's maybe not so radical.
But at the same time, when the first branding of your thing is like that, I think what it does is it alienates the actual, you know, cops from the sort of discussion. discussion, because it's like, you know, in the feminist movement, the let's hate men, all men are pigs ideology, right? That completely alienates the men from the discussion, and they are a integral part to, you know, dismantling the patriarchy. When it comes to this, if the branding for your ideology alienates this group of people that are part of the problem that you're trying to solve,
and there are going to be some people who they hear that and they instantly go, oh no, I'll never agree with that, and they won't look into it further because of how radical it seems up front. Even though that may get a reaction, it may deter some people from doing anything about it.
I can understand that,
Yeah. This one, I don't know if it's necessarily controversial, but it's my philosophy about what some people call the sanctity of life. So this ties into several different things. It ties into the death penalty, abortion, and assisted suicide. It's kind of the argument, when it comes to the death penalty at least, that, you know, we should not try and take the action of killing somebody if we can help not doing it. That's the same thing with assisted suicide. People that think that it's not correct because you should always choose life. Same thing with abortion. You should not, you know, kill a life whatsoever because of the potential. A fetus versus a hardened criminal versus somebody that is manically depressed. All of them, for the people that choose life in those cases, because they hold on to kind of the potential of a human being, of a human life. I just say that, how come that thought process never applies to killing foreign soldiers in war or having our own die, right?
And then are you for or against all of those things?
I say that the sanctity of life is not existent. I say that we kind of have maybe a dogma. We think that life is automatically the best stage, whatever it may be. And I know, at least on the left, right? People are usually against the death penalty. They are for pro-choice. When it comes to assisted suicide, it's kind of, you know, iffy either way. All of those arguments make sense, except when people apply it to the death penalty. For assisted suicide, it's helping somebody. It's kind of like a remedy, right? Same thing with abortion. It's a remedy for somebody's circumstance. Whereas when it comes to the death penalty, the act of killing somebody is a punishment. And that's when this whole sanctity of life thing comes through. Oh, you should always choose life, like, you know, potential, forgiveness, restoration and stuff.
It could become better. It's the sort
of exactly. We disregard life in so many other ways. When it comes to war, right? We celebrate, even though that is maybe even more death than somebody getting an abortion or one criminal being executed by the state. Any of you guys have any opinions against it?
For me, each kind of different, like, thing that you mentioned, I kind of have, like, a different opinion on, I guess. Because it's kind of true, like, in one case, death is seen as a punishment. In one case, it's seen as, like
good thing.
Relief, you know, if it's euthanasia. Do we want to, like, each talk about... Do we want to just go into that?
Yes! I love to hear it.
All right, what's the first one?
How about death penalty versus euthanasia? Because abortion is a very different, like... It's sort of like getting into the territory of whether a fetus is their life or not, and that could be safe for an entire other thing.
True.
So let's just do euthanasia versus death penalty.
Okay. Well, in my opinion, I think that euthanasia is fine. If someone really wants that, I think that makes sense. If they're, you know, if they have some sort of terminal illness and, you know, they're in a lot of pain, you know, in a lot of these cases, people, there's no chance of recovery. If they do live, they'll just be living in pain. I think that in that case, it's completely fine. You know, in some cases too, maybe where, like, some people are clinically depressed and there's really no way that they'll ever get better, then I think that yes, it's fine. Yeah. It's just another kind of thing is, like, if they're in a state where, like, they cannot think for themselves, like...
I think if you choose to do assisted suicide, that is your choice as long as you are in the right mind, and that, I believe, has to be assessed by, like, a psychiatrist or some like equivalent. You have to be checked to make sure you are in your right mind and you're okay to make decisions beforehand. So I think as long as that's been done and you have the ability to make decisions for yourself, it is then your decision.
But would you say somebody who is manically depressed is, I don't think they could ever be in the right mind.
That's true, and that's, you know, why it comes to
well, if it's like a thing that there's, like, no hope for them ever, kind of, I don't know, living with that in kind of like a, I don't know, like, comfortable way. Like, if there's no way of, if they know, and, like, the doctors know, like, that there's no way of them ever going, like, living a normal life, and that this is what they really want, then, like, I think it's fine.
It's not talking about if you just have a depressive disorder and you're still able to live your life, but it's like so hard to live your life. If you were still able to live your life, then there are obviously medications to try, there are therapies to try, there are various things you can try and do. But if it's at the point where you are hospitalized 24/7, your entire life you are hospitalized, but you are still considered to be in your right mind, able to make decisions, then that is a thing that you can consider. If it's been decided that they're in their right mind and they've deliberated it, and I think there also is a waiting period of you having to keep on saying it. You have to say
keep
it.
Waiting period would probably
Okay, so now, how do we feel about when it comes to the case of the death penalty, especially when it's somebody that has taken the life of somebody else?
Does death rectify other death? It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's kind of like eye for an eye.
I don't think an eye for an eye really works. If someone, like, stabs your eye, stabbing their eye isn't gonna really do anything. You're still blind.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like the death penalty.
Yeah.
It seems like either way you look at it, it doesn't really work. Because if you do want the person to be punished, we were just looking at death as something that could be like a relief.
Yeah.
So it kind of seems like counterproductive for me to now look at it like a punishment, like you said earlier. They don't have to think about what they did because they're gonna be dead. Not a lot of thinking there.
And like the big argument for the death penalty is either A, it deters the rest of society from committing crime, which statistics show that it does not do.
It's like, no, that's not true.
Yeah, and the second one is that which one takes up more resources, right? Like keeping them in jail for life because they are a danger to society, or killing them with, probably pretty expensive drugs. And as a society, you might want to ask yourself, like, how do we want to go about that? Are you two both sort of against the death penalty?
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of research into it, but I don't know. I see no huge benefit to it. So then why? There's no benefit large enough for me to support it. So then I don't support it because I don't see a reason. It's not a good punishment because we were just talking about death as a relief, and we were just talking about how, like, some people, they might go to death row and they'll be like, yeah, I'm chill with it, and some people will go to it and be like, well, at least I don't have to feel this guilt anymore. Like, it can be not as much of a punishment as some people think. They're like, they'll never change. Well, they could.
And actually, another thing, like what you were saying about maybe it costs more to like keep a person in prison for life than it does to just like give them the lethal injection and have it over with. Well, I've heard cases where people have literally like been on death row so long that they've died of natural causes before they even got to their injections. So
that is very true.
Yeah.
It's such a long process. And the other deterrent is that there is a statistic. I don't know what percentage, but there are people that have been innocent and on death row. And the thing is,
that's true.
Yeah, they were probably convicted at a time when forensic science was not as advanced as it is now, and also a lot of them are minority groups, men with prejudice against them, and they stay on death row for many, many years. Some of them have been executed, and it turns out they were innocent. It's just that possibility that's also a bit of a deterrent. Like, okay, that's my controversial thing, Miss
All right,
Diana.
Miss Diana with her controversial opinion.
With her Diana deliberations.
Stop this. This is not going to be a thing, even though
Yes,
I
it is.
You have the book
You
every
created
day.
the alliteration
Yeah,
there.
whatever. My controversial opinion is that I don't think that capitalism is working as a system, but I don't think that, because I've been seeing a lot more people talking about, like, well, then we need communism. And
That's not how it works.
I don't think that that's a good idea, just because I think that communism isn't really a realistic kind of like ideology, just because, like, even though there's been like the Soviet Union and stuff, there's never actually a society that's existed that was like, actually follows like the communist like
Communism
ideology
works
to like
in
a T.
theory, not in practice.
Yeah, that's what I think. Because just it's hard to get everybody to agree to that, because the only way that it would work is that if everyone in your group, like, I mean, if you had like a small group of people and you're just like, hey, 10 people, let's pack up and live off, I don't know, on an island somewhere, then it would probably work. But just like with a big country like the United States or Canada, like I just don't see that working realistically.
I'm like so glad that, because this topic is so loaded. So the thing is, the reason why communism might work in theory and not in practice is because I think fundamentally it goes against a lot of human nature. Like, if you think about capitalism, which we are beginning to see the flaws in, every century there's a world power. And that world powers ideology seems to be resolute, you know. They are flourishing. The entire world seems to be adopting their culture and stuff. Now we're living in the age of the United States of America. And you can make the argument that the US is on the decline, which, you know, we're kind of living through it, so it's hard to predict.
I think one of the reasons that it's going to, like, that America seems like it's on a decline is because so many people are talking about the issues with ethics within capitalism. It seems like if there's so many issues with it, then it can't be that great of a system. If everyone keeps on talking about, like, you capitalist pig and that sort of stuff, well, then it can't last forever if slowly more and more people start to think like that.
The arguments from the left and the right are that the right, like, capitalism is private enterprise, so it's supposed to be like, if you have merit, you will get far through your own work, and you get to keep whatever you earn. The medical system, right? If you have competition, that encourages better quality for your citizens. Whereas a lot of people on the left, whether that's like socialism or communists, they want the state to control things. They want the state to rectify society's problems, and they want the state to equalize. Like, if you live in a capitalist society, there's going to be a winner and a loser, right? And the loser, they would say, like, this system is not fair because there are not a lot of winners and a lot of losers. The top 1% of America versus, like, the wealth that gets distributed to the bottom 90%.
I think we need to find kind of a healthy middle where, like, because communism I don't think is going to work, but I don't think that the current system that we have in place is working either. I think that we need to kind of, you know, make the gap between the rich and the poor, like, much smaller. And I mean, that sounds like, easy in theory, like, but when you actually apply it, it's very hard to do. But again, it's just like taxes, maybe, you know,
tax the
rich. That's kind of another thing that is kind of a little bit of a controversial opinion of mine. Like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes those kind of phrases, like tax the rich and, like, eat the rich, after a while, like, when you say them, I don't know if, like, they lose meaning.
Yeah, because I think it again is like the whole all cops are bastards thing. It oversimplifies something that is so, like, it says that the problem is the rich people when the problem is the entire economy and all of the cogs in the machine in that way.
Yeah, like, I mean, it sucks that rich people are rich and they're just, like, and I don't mean, like, rich people as in, like, millionaires, I mean, like, Jeff Bezos, billionaire, trillionaire, whatever. They are bad for holding on to that much money for literally no reason. Like, I can't even think of what you would buy with $1 trillion except
you don't. It's like, almost impossible.
You can get a divorce.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Split your wealth in half.
Yeah. No. So in that case, I do think it's their problem, but it's also the system too. So
so when it comes to
university,
that's so much.
Okay.
Like, I think the huge problems with capitalism become apparent when it comes to social welfare systems, or, like, the most basic foundations of society.
Well, we're gonna go back into morals. So let's open it up with a bit of a, first of all, do you think murdering someone's fine? Like,
definitely.
Yeah.
Honestly, so many people have died in the past.
No, I think that we can all say that just walking down the street and giving someone an old stab isn't very morally. This is the one that I want to talk about today. Do you think a person should be convicted as guilty if they were to kill someone in self-defense, but that person was not going to kill them? An example of this could be if you were to kill someone who is trying to sexually assault you and you felt like you were going to be in danger. Your way of getting out of that situation was by killing them. It was not premeditated. It was an in-the-moment thing. Are they guilty of murder?
I would say no. I think that's fine in my opinion.
If I was a judge, and I think we talked about this in law, like the degrees of murder, that would be it's like a heat of the moment situation and also a terrible situation that you're in.
What if you see someone who is in, like, some sort of a situation that doesn't look quite right? One person is maybe being slightly violent, and you go over there, you see a nice lead pipe, and you can go and whack them across the head, likely killing them. Do you do it?
I think this isn't even like a moral dilemma. It's just Chantel
just trying to say something.
She's trying to cancel us.
Me getting Diana and Glenda canceled. No. The thing is, what we were getting to was moral relativism. In which case is this okay, and which case is it's not okay.
Like, in the broader context, if we talked about moral relativism, definitely material for us to get canceled. So essentially, if we think about like all of the values that we have, and then compared to a time in history when things were absolutely horrible, like, you know, during middle of Nazi Germany, a moral relativist would say there's no absolute right or wrong whatsoever in any time period because it's all dependent on the ideas of the time, the environment of the time, whatever it is, and your own life experiences. A moral relativist does not necessarily disagree with the concept of law because in order for a society to move forward, right, there has to be the checks and balances. There has to be rules. They would also say that there's no objective when it comes to morality.
I agree with that mostly, but I don't know. I can't help like feeling like there's certain cases where you think that maybe human nature comes into it a little bit, and it like the one thing I would say is maybe like genocide, because I understand how you can be indoctrinated into a certain way of thinking or whatever, but you'd think like when you're killing like a bunch of people, wouldn't for like even 1 second you kind of have this thought that it's wrong maybe?
I feel like there could be some extreme situation where people could excuse that, but it would have to be such a dramatic extreme, and that's the point of moral.
I think the argument is that the dictator does not think of those people as people, right? Because if they viewed those people as, you know, equals and individuals, they would have had that kind of deliberation. When it comes to things like genocide and slavery, the whole kind of precursor to that is that you don't view those people as people.
Exactly, No, what I'm just trying to get at, it maybe not like that specific example, do you think that everything is relative, or do you think there might be a couple instances where there is something that might be objectively right or wrong? Or do you think there's nothing that's objective?
Nothing that's objective. That's like my own.
I think you do have to, if you are going to say, well, this medium bad thing is objective, and we are in a very medium world right now, taking an extremely bad thing, but you are in an extreme world, then once again it would become relative.
Exactly. Like, there's a difference between what you think morally and how you act, right? Because there are a lot of things. I know us, we're generally good people. We try to be good. But it's like when we come to this philosophical debate where it's just playing around with ideas, I don't personally find any objective thing. And also the whole, whether you think human nature is inherently good or inherently bad, I also see it as a blank slate of somebody's life experiences, you know, whatever. And that goes into free will and existentialism, which will be a podcast on its own.
We will probably get there at some.
Well, Diana, how about you? Do you feel like there's anything inherently good or inherently bad?
I don't know, because now I'm thinking about it. You bring up some good points. I feel like a lot of things are definitely relative. I don't know, because now you got me thinking, is there anything that's objective? Because, like, I don't know, I guess my opinion is that, like, basically everything is relative, but I also think that, like, and I might be wrong, but I'd like to think that, you know, there's a, like, it's human nature to be, you know, kind of decent to each other.
I think it's human nature that we want to be good for each other, but because our interpretations of good is so different, there's no way that we can all agree on that.
Yeah, and a lot of people might say that people start off as good, but because of life circumstances, like trauma that happens to them, whatever else it may be, they turn bad and they, you know, have their morality kind of switched.
Well, it's time to wrap it up. Thank you for listening to us get deep while the tea steeps. Please do not cancel us for anything we said in this one, as we did go over some controversial topics. Please like, subscribe, comment down below any suggestions. Cheers!
We'll see you next week!